You like that? You gonna say hi to people? You gonna be friendly or you gonna sleep? Okay. Josh is here, guys. Can you be a little louder? Go ahead. Can you? Okay. Oh, ooh, that was good. All right. Oops. Shoot. Forgot my headphones. Where are they? Oh, there they are. Hanging up. How are you guys? I think you can hear me, right? We are rocking and rolling today. Get the comments so I can see when you guys say, I can't hear you. Hear the dog, right? All right, I'm going to ask you again. Can you hear me now? It should be my headphone. I hope it keeps out some of the doggy sound. I'm going to give you a little Tosh. Say hi. Okay. All right, let me just see. Can you guys hear me now with my, I just want to make sure with my headgear. Because I, again, forgot to put it in until actually I said hello. I'm just taking a notebook here in case we need to chat. Can you hear me, guys? Yes, John, thank you so much. Okay. Ooh, so LaRocco's in the house. My hair is all over the place. And a new member, thank you. I think I saw that and I haven't gotten in to say thank you in the actual post area where I normally do that. But I appreciate that. That's a good friendly kind of support. Shiloh was here bright and early. I think you guys were all here. Perhaps. Shiloh says, can you advise if we should upload VA disability decision letter 100 PNT or have them request it? Oh, I would always upload it. You know, if you can, I was gonna say weird. If you can get it to them, just do it. When in doubt, you know, if it's nothing that's going to hurt your case, you know, like if it says, oh, Shiloh is limited to only medium level work and, you know, can't do that heavy work anymore. And I don't think PNT will say that, but that's something that would probably hurt your case. So they're like, and this is true of all the letters, guys. So whenever you try to get like a letter from, and I know you need that for PNT for other purposes, it might help your case go faster, Shiloh. But if I always say about getting doctor's letters when the doctors don't know what path you have to weave to get to being found disabled under the rules, you know, then it's actually worse to get one because their records might have reading between the lines told the SSA that you were disabled under the rules, and then the doctor who doesn't know that, oh, she's really limited, she can only stand like 5 hours a day, doesn't realize that that just sinks her ship because there's jobs that require less than that and all that kind of business. So sometimes it's better not to. But with PNT, obviously, that's a different story because you're using that to get on the priority track to the extent that people actually move faster on the priority track, which is questionable at times. John B says, and by the way, John B, did you just donate something? That's very sweet. It looks like $10 up there, but I thought I saw, that's very generous. Very kind. John B says, So this is a new question. Had my hearing last Friday. Lawyer did his opening, went over medical evidence, asked me one question. I'm not sure why he went over medical evidence. It's supposed to be a hearing about you, but not reiterating what's already in the medical evidence. Asked me one question. Judge stopped him. She asked me one question and then asked the VE one question. V answered no. Judge says approved. Perfect. Normally, now the judge already obviously knew that she was going to come to that conclusion. And then you might say, well, why not an OTR? Why did I have to go to a hearing? I can't explain why they always do that. Sometimes I think they don't really get to review all the evidence enough before a hearing to make an OTR decision, so that buys them extra time. But sometimes it's just a matter of just the last thing I want to see is I want to see that person's face so I can really get a feel for their, if they say they're, I don't know, I'm going to give a weird example. And this is completely just pulled out of the air, but let's say the person's like, I have a voice problem and I can't really talk. Maybe they want, the best form of proof of that to see how bad it is to have you right there. So that's just a weird example, but yeah, that's awesome. And when we said this before, when the judge asked the VE a hypothetical, just one, or it could be two, but if the VE says to every hypothetical no jobs, then and the judge doesn't continue asking questions until she can find jobs, then it's usually a pretty good sign, because the only evidence she has vocationally about jobs a hypothetical person could do is ones that said no, and she has to pick one of those hypotheticals to fit you into it. So, and it could also be she did ask the VE a question, so that makes you think she may have awarded that way, unless somehow she's awarding on a listing, but and they could do that. They don't, but she didn't have a medical expert. So usually I see a medical expert when they're going to do it. Oh, John says, your videos help me out a great deal. Thank you. You're so welcome. And thank you for being very generous like that. We might be soon taking another, I wouldn't even call it a 1%er. But sometimes we have out of category things and we get to move one along. So that would be more like what it is. Shiloh says, that's for SSDI too. Will they count 100 PNT against us when applying? No, not at all. No, it's never counted against you. The confusion people were having was that if I'm 100% PNT as stated by the VE, they said I'm disabled. How can the SSA argue that? Because the definitions are different. To be disabled 100% PNT does not mean you can't work. It means you have these other kinds of disabilities all ranked out and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean you can't work. In fact, a lot of 100% PNT people do work. So, but they definitely don't hold it against you at all. In fact, it can get you prioritized in terms of certain things, which I haven't researched exactly what they are, but presumably you get to get in front of an adjudicator faster and all that kind of business. Although I've seen it not happen. It's very frustrating. But that's the way it's supposed to be, I think. Mike Page is in the house. Nice to see you, bud. And Dimple's in the house. Love my coffee. Rolando is in the house. Good morning. Good morning to you, too. Michelle. Hi, Michelle. She's just showing that took us. I think I didn't reach. She does that a lot. They say loose as a goose. I'd say loose as a parrot. You've got a feather on your beak. You're very messy. Okay. Why don't you turn around? Good morning, Michelle. Shiloh says, should I wait until age 49, which is in 2 weeks, to officially apply for SSDI? Been out of work since 2023. No. What's the difference between 40 and 49? Zippo. So if you're going to file already, I would just file. And you are running down on time. You are more than probably halfway through your DLI if you had the best DLI possible. Because it's 26 and that was 23, so you're probably at least 2.5 years in. So if you're not planning on extending your DLI through some really simple, easy part-time work, I would hop to it, because at least it will roll through starting, I mean, it's only 2 weeks, but still roll through. And if you get denied ALJ wise before your DLI runs out, you still have a little tiny window that hopefully you get really much better evidence in that little tiny window of time. And you can still file again, whereas you can't if your DLI passes and the ALJ decision of denial happens on the other side of that DLI. That's when people are very screwed if they haven't decided to be creative and earn some credits. It's something they can do while disabled. Earth One's in the house. Thank you, Earth One. I think you were saying you could hear me, right? Yeah, John, look at that. 1776. Wow, did you pay 1776 and they keep 7 of it? That's kind of nasty. Right? You know, it's funny, now that we're in 2026 and it's the 250th year of, you know, being a free country, I was remembering back, because it was always so big in my head, in 3rd grade, which must have been 1976. Yes, old dog that I am. I was in the 3rd grade, and my 3rd grade teacher taught us, would take us to the gymnasium, little tiny elementary school, and we learned a formational march. We split, and there was a little bit of a skit too, I think, at some point, and it was a presentation for the parents, just our class. And I just remember thinking it was a big, huge deal, you know. And I don't know, it's just something I remember, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was 50 years ago. It's just nuts. It was the 200th, it was the bicentennial, and there was a big parade in my town. My town used to have a parade every year. It was a small town, but all the other towns in New Jersey, even like South Jersey, would come up to north, kind of western Chester, where I grew up, and it was just like such a big deal. And then I guess it's very costly, of course, and they changed it to every 5 years, probably 30 years ago. What are you doing? You're acting like you're gonna fly. Don't land on those candles. It won't feel good. John B says yes. John B, I really appreciate. Yes, 1776 for our freedom. I agree. Hold on to that freedom, right? It can slip through your hands very easily, as we are seeing. Well, we're seeing tries anyway. But we're holding it down. Danny's in the house. I'm in class only 2 minutes late. You're doing good there, Danny-O. All right, Gigi. I hear all the way in rural Northern Ohio. Welcome, Northern Ohio. Nice to see you. That's amazing. Dimple says, I'm curious when to expect a function report. Usually now, they're doing them definitely as soon as you get an adjudicator. And I'll look into where we're at with that, you know. Yeah, maybe when we get out of here. So that happens pretty fast. And as you know, just let me know, because you're going to get it before I do. And we have already put together your stuff you gave us. So it won't be a big, long, there might be a few clarification questions, but we'll get it right out. So. Gigi, it's Deb. Deb L. Well, I'm so glad to see you. You changed your name. Unless you're a different Deb L. Which one? Is this the Deb L that I've known forever on here? I hope so, because that means you're feeling up to being here today. That's a good sign. It's positive anyway. Okay. Rat's Nest is in the house. Hi, Stephanie. Lawyer thinks she can get an OTR before hearing. How often does that happen? I will say it doesn't happen often. Sometimes when I think it should be an OTR, like, you know, I'll send in an OTR. I don't do it unless I have really strong legal technical reasons to think it's viable or possible. And then still, most of the time, those won't be OTRs. Do you guys remember a few months ago, I had 2 OTRs in 1 week, though? And by the way, you don't have to send in a request for an OTR. They will give it to you if they think it should be an OTR. We can request it, but they do it sua sponte anyway. So I think the lesson from that, guys, on OTRs is, yeah, we can ask for one. They probably think we're ridiculous because obviously we reviewed the case and we would have given it to you because we don't want to waste our time with a hearing if we don't have to. Understood. The reason why it's not a problem to do an OTR is that when they went over it, maybe there wasn't this, something was missing, or I do a brief for all my hearings anyway, and the OTR would just be the brief getting in there, which it does anyway before hearing, and just saying, hey, can you consider an OTR? And here's a brief supporting that. So it's basically the same process. Sometimes people say, well, I want you to, send an OTR. I'm like, OTR. I'm like, that's not the kind of case I'm doing an OTR. I'm not going to do it if we're going to look stupid and, when it's not really applicable. And you just have to practice to know what that means, I guess. But it's like, you don't ask for the mile when you know you're still jogging at the half mile mark. Like, you know what I mean? The hearing will clinch it. Ostensibly, that's what you're thinking, like the hearing and the post-hearing review that the judge does, going over the file again and all that. So definitely don't ask for OTR on most cases, by far. But I do submit a brief on all cases. So the opportunity is always there. And that's why it's fun when you do get one. Usually you get it very close in time to the hearing, so you've already done all the dozens and dozens of hours of work on it. But it is what it is. At least, the client knows they won. They don't have to go to hearing. So that anxiety is off the board in that experience. Virginia Gomez is in the house. Hey there. It's been a while, Chica, but good morning and good news. I haven't won any of my cases, but I do get IHSS 88 hours a month for my lupus that got bad. I'm like, Gov helped me before state. Okay. I don't really know what that means. I'm like, Gov helped me before state. Okay. But anyway, that sounds good. I'm glad you're happy. That's awesome. So that's like an in-house thing? 88 hours a month. So what do you do? Divvy it up? How do you do that? That's awesome, though. Too bad everybody that needs it can't get it. Well, maybe they can. Maybe people just don't. You gotta apply for that, right? John B says, dang it. Was supposed to be the 1776 donation. Never did this before. Oh, well, you got $10 out. No, appreciate that. And the next one that we'll be taking on is on the horizon, just clinching it, kind of. Clinching the decision, because you don't want to bypass anyone. We always go in that first in, first out, so nobody's jumping the line. First time doing this. I hear you. Hey, Rip's in the house. Hello, Stephanie. My appeal is looking even better as VE said there was 2 jobs I can do, but according to consultative examiner's diagnosis and medical records, I don't meet the vision requirements, and the other job was already reduced in half due to additional limitations, but medically that job is impossible for me to do realistically. Realistically, it doesn't really matter at that point in the game. It's unless the judge sees it that way too. It's the what the laws say, and what your medical evidence shows. Let me back up. You said CE diagnosis. I think what you're saying is CE confirmed you have the diagnosis that is already established. So that's not really a big deal. How did the CE describe the severity and the functional limitations that would stem from it? That's what you kind of have to know. You know what I'm saying? Because it's all about not, you need the diagnoses, but that's not going to win anyone their case unless it's a compassionate allowance, which those are few and far between. It's all about the proven functional limitations that stem from that in your particular case. Not what generally happens to most people with that diagnosis. That's not going to do anything. That's why when people say they submit a bunch of literature, go, well, read this, I go, I don't need to read that. And I'm not spending my time reading that. I know how to look up a diagnosis, you know, and see what the symptoms are. It's a matter of what's in your records and what's not in your records. And that's where those records are the single most important factor. The jobs, you know, Rip goes on to talk about how one of the jobs, you know, probably the VE might have given when they have to give the job, the numbers of those kind of jobs that exist in the economy, and they might have said 100,000, and then with an additional impairment in there, say vision, only 50,000 would be available when you take into that consideration the vision part, because some of those occupational places require, you know, you need to have this. Well, 50,000 is probably still substantial, is my guess. So just because it's reduced in half, that doesn't matter. It's the end number. Is it a substantial number? And they don't define substantial number, by the way, guys. So that's always makes it a very slippery slope. I never rely on that. That's just not either. My evidence is going to be so darn strong, it's going to win on the medical evidence. You know, I'm not relying on, they're just going to say that there's nothing. That's ridiculous. Not that you're ridiculous, but vision requirements. So that means when you're talking, he's saying that he doesn't meet the vision requirements. So what would have had to have happened at the hearing, probably, is that when the two jobs were presented, someone, your attorney, you, or even the judge said, well, what kind of near acuity vision or peripheral vision, or there's a few different ways they describe the different kinds of looking. Like, can you accommodate and go back and forth real fast? Like, is that like, do they have to be able to go look at something far away and then look at something close? And some people can't do that. So if the VE says, and the way I often present it is, those jobs you mentioned, do they, what frequency of acuity in the vision is required for those jobs? And they can look it up and they'll be like, oh, it requires frequent acuity. So if someone has really troubled vision with acuity, or seeing up close, or seeing fine detail, I might say, so someone who lacks the ability to frequently see, you know, frequently meaning up to 2/3 of a day visually with acuity, being able to see clearly, acuity, would not be able to do those jobs. Is that what you're saying? You know, like, you just kind of reword it and put it right back, and they say, right. And then, of course, the judge has to find that how I presented it is, in fact, represented by the medical evidence, by the substantial medical evidence. So it's a little, sometimes you want to, when you know what they just said and you know what the logical reverse is, sometimes we present it backwards like that. Simple says, I have some bicentennial quarters somewhere. Oh, man. Yeah, 1976. My brother was a senior in high school. Yeah. It was a good year. Wasn't really my favorite teacher, though. Believe it or not, probably one of my least favorite. I had some really nice teachers. Not that she was a bad person or anything. Just not a lot of humor. If you can tell, I laugh a lot. All right. 7X, see your face. Do you keep changing your name? If my workers' comp claim closes before I'm awarded SSDI, do I still have to have Medicare set aside? You better hope you have Medicare set aside. I don't do the workers' comp stuff, so I don't know what comes first. I think I'll have to ask my friend who's a partner in a workers' comp law firm in Jersey, and every state is different, but there are similarities. And ask her. But I think a workers' comp lawyer potentially would be negligent if they don't protect you with the Medicare set aside, knowing that unless you didn't tell them, but knowing that you're filing for SSDI and might get Medicare. Or if someone is presumably, if they're arguing, you can't work, well, that's, very indicative of a Social Security disability person potentially. And you would think they would be like protecting you with that Medicare side. Hey, Furry's in the house. Yeah, long time no see. He's an awesome dimple. I love those. Something my birth year. Hi, Deb. I assume there's a good reason why you changed your name. Maybe you didn't want to be so identified. I don't blame you. Okay. Shiloh says, next question. What info is needed for best possible way to get approved on first try for PTSD? Should I get a lawyer or wait? What info is needed? The medical documentation showing that it would be disabling. Not just that you have PTSD. So many people have PTSD and they work. So you need to show that it prevents all work. All work. Work where you work by yourself. Work where you work with no coworkers, no public, if that's your problem. Low stress, simple third grade job, and you don't have to deal with people. What could possibly go wrong? But seriously, that's a hard thing to prove. Presumably someone that can talk to nobody, can't work alone, like they can't leave their house. Like, what would be the reason why you couldn't do that job? PTSD is not, it might be the reason, but you can't just say I have PTSD, therefore. So you have to really, really go to town on that. You probably want to look at those 4 domains of mental tasks that if we have a substantial loss in the capacity to do any one of the 4, we really probably can't do any job in the universe that exists in substantial numbers. So I would look for that, the 4 domains. I'm sure I have a video on it someplace, but you could look it up elsewhere too. The second question he had was, should I get a lawyer or wait? Wait for what? A denial, so your case is happier than it would be later. Like, if you can get a lawyer now, I would. Do your best, do the best you can. And I know some people don't want to get a lawyer because they're like, yeah, but what if I could win on my own and I save a couple $1,000s or whatever? Well, up to $9,200, but those are maybe not so. That's not likely going to happen. And they want to save that money. That's understandable. It's just it may or may not be the wisest choice. You tend to have a weaker case, I think. Well, it depends who you get. Sometimes it's not going to hurt you or help you. But sometimes it depends who your lawyer is, right? Are they the type that do work initially, or the ones, because there's some that say, no, we'll take it, but you have to do everything yourself. And then they just run with it and gather evidence, order the evidence in time for hearing, because the SSA does it down below, most of it. In that case, yeah, why not just wait, right? Let's see. Oh, John, Stephanie, this is John number 2, the logger. Yeah, all right, that's John B. and there's John TB. And you're calling yourself number 2. Well, you're both number 1s in my book. So nice to see you, John. Sean TB says, hello, chat. Who's chat? I'm looking at your picture, John. I'm like, is that a bird on his shoulder? See, I'm so birded out. And I see the black thing to the left of your face. It's probably just a bag hanging in the background. But I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks like a crow from my bad eyesight. And of course, I'm a little obsessed with crows because I've raised quite a few in my time. They're amazing. So cool. Oh, yeah, John. John was talking about health insurance, right, John? Yep. I think we did a video on that. Yeah. It's tough. You know, if you can, sometimes people, I think we might have touched on this, John, work part-time under SGA, file their claim for SSD, and use the part-time money to pay for the health insurance that they no longer have because they stopped working full-time. Not always doable if you're also going to need it for your bills, though. So much depends on, like, if you have a support structure, if you have a supportive spouse. When we're single, it's so much harder. It's so much harder. I wish everyone had a good supportive spouse. Second best is good supported other family, extended family. Parents can be really helpful, even aged, senior parents. Put a roof over your head while you're, sometimes siblings will do the same. It's sometimes better if you can, like, take the spare room instead of saying, hey, can you throw me $2,000 a month so I can pay my rents? It's difficult decisions for sure. Gigi's saying, John, okay, I do understand, but please don't destroy your body further by continuing to work. I think she's saying, it's a hard call, right? Most of us have not prepared for this. I myself included. So, like, I always say, oh my gosh, I know how frequent disability is. It's like, what do they say? 1/3 will be disabled before they're even of early retirement age. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's what I heard or read a few years ago. And I think it's just getting worse. And I think it's because of our foods, but that's just me. But maybe the water too. Depends where you are. And we don't prepare. And I've been saying to myself 20 years ago, like, now I could probably afford it, but, like, disability insurance policy, private. So if you have to go through that, you'll have this other form of income coming in. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I never did buy it because I was always like, oh my gosh, I got the kids this to get. Like, we were always, when the business was, growing, literally from a place of zero fledgling back in 2005. And so we never did it either. And it's scary. Like, now that I'm getting older, I'm like, yeah, I only got a few more years to go. Not that I'm going to take it at 62, but gosh forbid. I mean, if I have to, I would, but that's not my plan. But plans go awry, right? Nobody plans on getting disabled. So that's why the other avenue is keep your bridges strong, bridges to family and close loved ones that it's very hard. Like, how many people do we have that we could truly rely on? You can have someone saying, like, you can have like 1,000 Facebook friends and you really have no friends, right? Those are really just, I don't know what that is. Rip says, I have 20/50 visual acuity in my right eye and blind in left. Deliver for DOT requires 20/40 in both eyes. Okay, so you used to be a delivery person. Is that it? Is that your only past relevant work? And is that incorrectable? The 20/50? remember, it's got to be without, like, if it's correctable to something better, that's what counts. John says, I'm trying not to hurt myself anymore. Yeah. At least go with a gentle job, right? You know, sometimes it's better to make less if we can afford it. We can trim our budget and protect ourselves than sticking with a very difficult job. And that would be true, by the way, of mental health stresses on both physical impairments and if we have mental health impairments. You know, someone that has a high stress job and they know it's not really good for their maybe vulnerable mental health situation at the time. Sometimes it's just better to try to find something else to do. And if it means taking a cut in pay, maybe cut out Hulu and just keep Netflix. Just kidding. Or vice versa. Or do none of them. Ah, there's a thought. Rip says, because I have monocular vision, I would not meet the requirements even with the corrective lenses. Because of the other eye? Gotcha. All right, so you can't do deliverer. Is that your prior work? Is there no other work in your prior work window? And then you have to figure out, do you have transferable skills? And also, are you physically exertionally, because you're not going to win on blindness, you know, per se. You're not listing, in other words. But at least I don't think you are. Have you proven, if you're over 50, have you proven that you meet the exertional reduced amount you need to, even though it's not fully disabling, the physical, to get the grids under your side? Hopefully. Okay. Meow's in the house. Hi, Meow. Hi, Miss Joy. On the SSA, you can call me Stephanie. On the SSA site, it shows approval 1 week ago. But when will I receive the letter? When the mailman brings it. They send it by regular mail. So I don't know if your mail is slow or not. And I'm not sure when they say approval on the website, does it mean medical approval, but they still have to do the non-medical, which is that 15 to 30 day thing? It's probably what you're in. Anyway, congratulations. That's awesome. Right? You want a cracker? You want this one? Did you see her throw it? She does that when she wants something better. Golden Graham, generic version. Sweet. You see, she's got a sweet tooth. And yeah, she gets a little bit of people food. That error is material because ALJ, what error? Is ALJ relied on this job? Oh, to support. So he denied you? You just said you didn't know yet. You relied on this job to support a finding of not disabled plus maybe you're appealing it to appeals council? Plus ALJ made so many errors of law and mischaracterized the medical records. Well, then if it's clear, then you have an appeal. So that's good. Yeah, if he relied on that, sure. But did he found you could do the delivery job. Might not be your past work, but he found you on step 5, other jobs, which means you weren't under the grids. Well, you were perhaps, but. Shiloh, you're welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hold on 1 second, guys. Let's change this up. Do. Yeah. I'm playing around with the little buttons over here. All right. Back to the list. All right. Yeah, so John TP says he's single. Yeah. I want everybody to be with somebody that they're good with. I just think it makes life so much easier. It really does. And more pleasant. Meow Meow says this channel helped. Well, thank you. That's the goal, right? Gigi says Gigi had 3 degrees and 3 endorsements, so I could help multiple groups of people at the same time. They've been on SSDI for almost 17 years. She's a trooper, and she's always helping people, John. How long it takes for children's auxiliary benefits. This is 2020. And I'm not talking about the year, I'm talking about the viewer. How long it takes for child's auxiliary benefits to process after applying, please. So you prevailed on whatever claim you were doing, whether it was retirement or disability, and you then affirmatively applied for the child, right? It usually happens fairly quickly. You just have to prove the legal child-parent relationship and that, they have to live with you. Well, no, they don't actually have to live with you if you're an SSD or SSR. We're not talking about SSI and handling their monies. So I assume you said auxiliary benefits, so you must be talking about Social Security or SSI. It's pretty fast if you get everything in. I assume that's what you did. So it should be. I mean, I would go if I don't hear something in 2 or 3 weeks, I'd probably give a phone call if I were you. And then they might say, oh, it's being worked on, and then go another 2 or 3 weeks and or every week. Hey, Adam's in the house. Hey, Adam. Adam says, hi, Stephanie and all. Adam's in the house. Woohoo. Virginia Gomez says, number 2, I get IHSS in-home, right? In-home services, 88 hours in-home care, my former livers needs. I just don't understand why SSI thinks I can still work, knowing providers work for me to take care of me. Do they know that? Do they have all your medical records? So they might not know that. Why would they know that? If you don't give it to the adjudicator doesn't know it. So, so I would get that documentation. I mean, there must be something that got you that, like it says, she's been granted this IHSS, whatever you guys call it, due to a need for that she can't do. Get something like that. That's not going to be conclusive because, let's face it, there's a lot of irregularities sometimes in these state programs that usually take federal monies, but not always, but they always take taxpayer monies. And it's not like it's never been fraudulently done before. So you still have to prove with your own medical records. But I don't think it hurts. So it could be one of those little crumbs of additional. Yeah, she has this really strong stuff, and and I assume there was a doctor that said she needs in-home care, right? So get that report. I assume it wasn't just some secretary that decided it and then you got it, right? See what kind of paper. Maybe order that file from whoever does all that stuff in your state, and see the whole entire file. And see if there's anything in there like that, like a doctor. Doctor says, I read all the record. She definitely needs, because she can't walk stably, she needs, whatever it is. Okay. Patriot says, Patriot's in the house. Hi, Patriot. I had my hearing for onset appeal. Oh, yeah, you're doing the onset appeal. So I think, refresh me, Patriot, if I say this wrong, Patriot had prevailed, but they gave him a date far later than he asked for, and he totally disagreed, and he appealed the onset. We do have some videos on that option people have when they don't get the onset date that they said they were disabled as of. I think we go into some of the risks and the pros are obvious. But the risks that people just have to be aware of so they can weigh if it's going to be a big risk in their case or a puny risk. It's going to be big or puny or somewhere in between. And then they can decide if it's worth it to appeal. Judge didn't ask me any questions, only asked the VE one question about light work. And what did the VE say, Patriot? Attorney has 3 questions of VE. What do you think? I don't know. No way to know. No way to know. John TB says, Gigi is awesome. She deserves a helping hand and a good friend. Yes, she does. Out there in Iowa. King Moose, my children are part of my SSDI claim, but I got approved, but the allowance not on SSA website. Yeah, so I guess they don't put it up there. I assume in time maybe they will, because, 2 years ago we didn't have anything on. We really didn't have almost nil, and slowly things are getting added. So I'm at least now they are. So I think in time that will get better. But if you get approved, your kids don't automatically get it. You have to affirmatively apply for them. So call the SSA about that if you haven't done that. All right? You want to make sure there's an application in there. Because if too many months go by and there's no application for the kids, they're not going to go retro 3 years if that much time goes by. They're not going to give them all the back. So you do have a little bit of a window, but you have to make sure you do that. Okay? All right. Why don't you turn around? You're just showing everyone your back. You're a mess. See what I got? Yeah. Because you're like, have your dandruff hanging out. She was probably cleaning her back. Okay. Hey, Christina. Christina's in the house from California. Aw. John, you have 5 grandkids and 1 on the way? Is that correct? That's awesome. I wonder if I'm going to have grandkids. I started late with the kids. I was like 40 when I had my kids. So let's see. So I don't really want them to rush and have kids very early. So I'll probably be pretty decrepit. Or in a little jar someplace. All right. Sorry about that. Virginia, you're very welcome. Andrew Hood is in the house. Can you get SSI for having Crohn's disease? Yeah, if it's bad enough. It's going to be about how severe it is. So, for sure. Look at it this way, Andrew. You can get disability benefits for any diagnosis that makes you disabled, with the exception of, and this is going to be a thing, if let's say your diagnosis is excessive alcohol consumption in current day, like presently, or substance abuse, and when you're all tanked up, you can't work. That's going to be a DAA case probably, and the person, But if you have other impairments, even if someone does tie one on too much, if the other things are still going to be disabling, whether you stop or not, like they are disabling in and of themselves, then that won't matter. But any diagnosis, if it is severely functionally limiting, proven so by medical evidence on a continuing and ongoing basis, not just of 1 month, absolutely you can. And Crohn's for sure the same. Okay. Oh, Christina, thank you. You are very kind. This crazy time we're in, right, Christina? Ah. Oh, that's very sweet. Christina says, Stephanie Joy has been my attorney for a long time. Stephanie and her team are awesome. We try. We try. Andrew Hood, that's very kind of you, Christina. Andrew Hood says, I have had it for over a year, removed colon, still having complications, and found out my Remicade infusions are not working. The insurance keeps denying new medication. Oh my gosh. Do you guys appeal those insurance denials? Like the doctor can say, no, he actually needs this particular brand, not that other one. He needs this. I mean, I know with my kids and particularly certain asthma medications that they're both in need of, which burns my britches. We're always getting stuff like that. Oh, it's no longer formulary. We don't cover it. You have to go to something else. Well, what would you suggest? Like, okay, so so then you got to kind of throw it back at the doctor, and the doctor will be like, I think our doctors usually say, oh, that other generic they want is just as good, so then they'll prescribe that. And these are usually the long-term, not the albuterol, but the long-term horror show things they have to inhale or take by pill. And it seems to be overcome by doing that, but you have to kind of be squeaky. So if they say no, then talk to your doctor about, well, is there a generic of the same thing? Or if there's not, and we've tried everything and failed, that doctor needs to get their little peeps out there and appeal that. They're the ones that have the power to do that. And it's kind of worked into their system. Now, if you have a mom and pop, I don't know how good they are about doing that, but the networks are pretty good about doing that. As much as I can't stand them in other ways, there are some positives. Not the least of which is if they have a really robust set of specialists, you can always usually get a specialist. Oh, Christina says something so very wise. Please do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. What is that? Red finger number 1, red finger number 2, red finger number 1. What does that mean? But I agree. Why not? They say I'm supposed to say that. All right. John and Gigi are having a nice little combo. Christina says, I get my answers for my questions at night, in the morning, over the weekend. Oh, they are on it. All right, she's talking about us. Oh, sorry. I didn't know. Yeah, so it is true. We have a portal, and when people ask their questions, normally we're not in crank down hearing mode, which we are right now. And things get slow a little bit, but I think we're all caught up right now. Yeah, it could be me, it could be one of the team members that know the answer and give it to them, so nobody really has to wait. It all goes to the portal. It's in messaging, so it's all well documented. And so yeah, like if someone asks a question on a Saturday, they might get an answer on a Saturday. They don't have to wait till Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. John says, that's too bad. I keep interrupting your conversation. I'm sorry, Gigi and John. I got to read them before I click on them. Andrew Hood says, one last question. They are sending me for a mental status exam. Should I be worried, and what kind of questions will I be asked? I don't think you should be worried. And the mental status exam is usually the normal mental health questions, like the history, and that's when you're going to, and symptoms. You're sometimes they go through your whole like childhood history and stuff like that. And what are your symptoms? I have a video on it. It's kind of dated now, but I don't think it's changed, but I should probably take a listen myself. It's a couple years old, on what to expect. I always say, don't hold anything back that's accurate. Don't be due to embarrassment, or don't be Superman or Superwoman and not complaining. Like, you don't get points for being brave. You just don't. So if you need to, make yourself a list so you can recall it better. And you can even say, my recollection on the spot is very bad. So I made a list so I could be sure to tell you everything. Now you just banged out in action that you have poor memory. If there's memory, if there's personality things, like you have irritability, if you have difficulties with people, if you say you're depressed, well, is it the kind of depression that lays you in bed for 3 days straight? And if so, how often? Like maybe start thinking about concretely how it affects things. Can't focus, can't, like I said, all the things I'm mentioning are generally not going to make you unable to do all 12,000 jobs in the economy. But if you are have other impairments and or are over the age of 50 and using a grid, the garden variety depression or anxiety, if you explain it well and show how it kind of interrupts your concentration, you're constantly distracted, maybe you have racing thoughts in the middle of someone's talking to you and your mind is going, woo, thinking about something else that you're worried about, excessive worry. Those things can really prevent a concentrating type of job. So you could probably eliminate all the high skill jobs that require Johnny on the spot thinking, all those kind of things. Oh, John says, Stephanie, you are fine and welcome to the conversation. Well, that's very kind of you, but I'm here to answer SSD questions. But I think you guys should continue. Dimple says, I love the portal. She's talking about our portal, client attorney team portal. So easy to upload info and ask questions. I have an accident attorney and they are a huge local firm, but they don't have a portal for docs and questions. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to PI. I assume they're just, ordering all the records for you. Of course, then you're probably getting charged at the end. You watch it, the end bill of the PI case. And then we subtract out the cost of the medical records. And I don't know if do they charge you just the cost that they had to pay? Or do they charge you a markup? I don't know. I mean, PI, one good thing about PI is it's contingent, so they're not charging you for the legal work all along. But they can charge you for the out-of-pockets, which the medical records could be. And then if they have to get an expert on your side, that's going to charge a few $1,000s and all that. So, but if they took your case, they know that it's going to be resulting in something that lands in your pocket. They're confident of that, even after all the expenses, or so they wouldn't probably take it. All right. We're getting late on the questions. All right, but Dimple brings up a good point here. And if we do close out early, that is just fine. I want to tell you, next week I have a hearing. It's 3:00 my time. I always have to be free and clear a half hour earlier because I call my client, make sure we're all in our MS Teams area and everything's fine. Hi, babe. And so I'm going to do 12:30 to 2:30. Maybe even 2:25, not by 2:30. So that I'm up and out. Okay, so Wednesday next, just a slight adjustment in the time, 12:30. And we'll go to 2:30 if there's enough for 2:30, and then I'll kick out. Okay? Just wanted to let you know if anybody plans on being here next week. Ann Miller's in the house. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. Okay. Ann says, if someone works part-time, will the job they do count against them? That depends if it's a kind of job that shows they're not disabled or not. A lot of people can work part-time, and they do it at a job that does not reflect that they're not being honest or accurate. I shouldn't say honest. They're not being fully accurate in their claim. So if someone says, I can't walk, let's give an obvious example. I can't walk or be on my feet more than 5-10 minutes at a time. My back is killing, my legs swell, whatever the case may be. Yet they take a job with 3-hour shifts as a cashier, standing up. That would not be good. For other people, a 3-hour, even though that's not SGA, you said you can only stand for 5 or 10 minutes, and now you're doing 3 hours by choice. So, as opposed to picking a sit-down job. So, it's kind of obvious. Like, you just need to look at what you might have to nitpick through it, but you'll figure out what kind of jobs are not going to be. If you said, I can't, stand long, but I can sit for, if I get a break up to 2 hours, I could probably do another 2 hours. And you turn out getting a 4-hour shift part-time job. And of course, we're always assuming under SGA money-wise, you get a 4-hour shift job where you can sit and stand at will, which is plenty of jobs like that, then that job might be consistent with all you just said. Can't stand long, can't sit long, and can't do 8 hours doing both, but I can do 4, and then I can go home and I have my feet up in the recliner. Because sitting and standing, the feet, let's say you have a edema problem in your legs, sitting or standing, feet are down, the swelling will occur generally for, a lot of people that have that kind of other full or side disorder. So the ability to get up and move is good. However, it doesn't prevent the problem, and there's probably other problems too. But the 4-hour shift, so that because you cannot do an 8-hour day straight, is really important. So just think about, it really will depend. And so I don't disfavor people who are working part-time at all. A lot of my clients do. They just have to be very careful. I wouldn't be choosing a job, even just choosing a job to try it. I'd be careful. Not a job, the job that is inconsistent with what you know is off the table, that you said is off the table. The ability to stand for 2 hours, and then you get a job standing for 4, right? Don Camp says, I get my benefits the first time in March. Ooh, but my letter also says my next payment is February. Do you think that's my back pay? Depends. Does it say anything more clear about what kind of payment it is? I get my benefits first time in March. I don't know. That's not clear to me. I'd have to see the letter. Sorry. A lot of times people just get their back benefits dumped in their account before they even get a letter, Or it'll just say you're going to be getting X amount in the near future. So usually when they give you a date like that, it's usually your monthly, I want to say. Because they know that there's a certain day of the month that is your birth date, the day in the month of your birthday, Dawn, is that later in the month versus earlier in the month? I wonder, because that might be why you have the 4th Wednesday or whatever it is as your payment date. Tiger Fight's in the house. Hi, Tiger. Hello, I was approved for my reconsideration. Woo. That's awesome. I'm so glad for you. See, guys, reconsideration. A lot of people can flip things around in reconsideration if they put in the effort, follow the advice of what they should be doing that they weren't doing on initial, and it can really change things around. But you have to be, it really has to be a priority. It's for most people. Because it's inconvenient and uncomfortable and co-pays, and sometimes people put things off. I have a case on initial. Person hasn't done anything in like 6 months. Something else was coming up medically that has nothing to do really with the part that would win the case. So that the part that won the case got in the back burner. And it's like either it starts now or consider postponing, like withdrawing and starting all over again when you can really put in the time. And it's not like the person wasn't distracted by this other problem, for sure. So I do totally get it. But you don't necessarily have to put the other things on the back burner. In fact, I'd say probably most of the time you don't. Particularly if they're unrelated. You're going to the doctor for this every, once a month, every 2 months, is more aggravated problem. Why is that stopping you when you're not working at all and you have a full schedule open for going for those other, and usually I'm talking about musculoskeletal visits, workups, getting on those knees that, you say hurt when you stand too long, and, the back doctor, the back is really humming when you sit or stand too long. Those are the things that you need to do. So, it's choice. And sometimes you just have to say it. This is what I'm going to do. It's like you're a boss whipping you. Make those appointments. Rosa Doza Pop. Hi, Rosa. That's a pretty interesting name. Rosa says, how hard would it be to get a SSDI for heads with associate, what is heads? With associate issues like CFS, I assume that's chronic fatigue syndrome. Yeah, you might want to spell out your acronyms because everyone has different ones. Like I'm assuming the CFS is chronic fatigue syndrome, but some wise guys I know call it something else. Can you guess? So you might want to spell those out. And much just as an overall, Rosa, much is going to depend on your vocational profile, age, education, and that's the least of the worries, education, and experience, which would be your jobs in the last 5 years or so. Usually the last 5 years. Okay. Ann Miller says, thanks. Been thinking about trying to be an eBay reseller part-time. Okay. This is an excellent point to bring up about doing gigger work like this and reseller. Reseller, I think you're referring to you buy stuff and then you resell it. Be very, very careful about the hours because even if you don't make SGA after all your business expenses of, writing off your cost of, cost of goods sold and all that, and your mailing costs if you have to mail them and all that, and your eBay costs, whatever. If your hours, if you're saying, well, I'm going to do it 20 hours a week, it's self-employment. And I think the SSA could look at that and be like, it's a lot of mental aforethought to do this, following steps, so if you had like a mental health thing where it was poor concentration and focus and following through, you might be defeating that. So you have to, think about that. And I know the beauty of it because if you see, I don't know how eBay's working these days. Like I know Amazon used to have like, you could send a bunch of stuff to Amazon. You could even pay for them to wrap it up for you, and then they put it in the storage associated with you. You pay those storage fees, and it gets put on their marketplace and sold, and you get your little commission or whatever, the excess that they don't take. In some ways, it can be okay. If you're obviously you have to be under SGA. But I just think you have to be careful because when we're self-employed like that, the SSA understandably is going to give a little more scrutiny. Because you say, well, I'm really only doing like 10 hours a week, which would be under that 45, which is kind of one of their tests. It's not definitive, but if your sales are super high and all this stuff was sent in and you describe that, well, yeah, I have to go to the post office and mail everything and write down mail it, address it, blah, 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 wrap it, put bubble wrap, it's going to start looking like you could do quite a bit. And I know that doesn't mean you could do full-time work, but could you be, doesn't mean you could do full-time work, but doesn't mean you can't. So everything else is to be really, really strong. And when we're self-employed, because we can tell them what we want about our job, because we're self-employed, it's our business, they're a little bit more Power outage, power outage. No. My camera. Let's see. You can hear me now, Rosa. We're having like such problems. I don't know what it is.